Canberra in the 90s had a bit of an identity crisis. It was seen as a soulless and cold city that you were forced to visit in primary school. Wanting to shake this image, Chief Minister Kate Carnell sought to bring an exhilarating event to heat up the capital and give rev heads an excuse to visit in winter. The V8 Supercar Canberra 400 brought the heat and spectacle, but the roar of the engines wasn't to last. 3 years into a 5-year contract, the Canberra 400 was finished. Was it the nanny state, the Carnell curse, or the NIMBYs? Well, in this episode of the Canberra Series, we're going to find out. This story doesn't begin with revving engines and burning rubber. Like most things in Canberra, it begins with politicians. In the mid to late 90s, Kate Carnell was Chief Minister and led a minority Liberal government in the ACT Legislative Assembly. Kate wanted to boost the local economy and change the perception of Canberra. She was the go big or go home type, but this attitude was catastrophic for her government and her time as Chief Minister. In 1997, Kate made an event out of the demolition of the Canberra Hospital. Over 100,000 people came to witness its destruction. As the explosives went off, shrapnel flew across the lake into the crowd, killing 12-year-old Katie Bender. Carnell was cleared of responsibility for Katie's death, but it wasn't a good look. In the same year, Carnell wanted to upgrade the Canberra Stadium so it could host soccer games for the Olympics. She underreported the initial costs and hoped for private investment. In the end, it cost taxpayers $82 million to upgrade. Kate won the 1998 ACT election with a hung parliament. Most likely wanting to make a splash in this term of government, she set her sights on the V8 Supercars. Adelaide had just scored its own V8 Supercars race after hosting the Formula 1 for 10 years. Both the F1 and V8s were a great opportunity for the city to promote themselves on the world stage and to boost the local tourism economy. Carnell believed it would do the same for Canberra. In July 1999, the public first became aware of Canberra potentially hosting a V8 Supercar race. The plan was to have it hosted on the June long weekend over a 5-year contract. The opposition and the public were sceptical of the costs and value for money due to Carnell's stadium upgrade fiasco. Carnell claimed it would cost $7 million to run for the first year, $4.5 million for capital works, plus $2.5 million each year for additional works. Tourism Australia loved the idea, drawing comparison to Monte Carlo. The head of the ACT branch put on the hard sell, telling the Canberra Times,
"It is critical that when great opportunities such as this V8 Supercar series comes within our reach, the industry, the government on both sides, and the community pulls together behind the project so it can be secured."
By August 1999, they were ready to secure funding, so the Legislative Assembly debated an appropriation bill for the $7 million needed to host the event. This was done in an attempt to be transparent and accountable, to avoid any single MLA or department controlling the funds. Of course, it's not just up to politicians to make up an event. The Australian V8 Supercar Company, also known as Avesco, were responsible for deciding when and where races would be held. While the ACT Legislative Assembly debated the appropriation bill, Avesco were planning their 2000 racing calendar. Both Townsville and Fremantle were vying for a spot in the 2000 season, so the ACT had to act fast if they wanted to be included. Knowing that the ACT government was working towards hosting the V8, Avesco took a tentative booking for the June long weekend. While this was all happening, a single man got to work designing the track. All the information points to Mark Scaife designing it, but in fact it was done by a public servant in the National Capital Authority. As an avid racing fan and loyal to Holden, Paul Dillon was charged with designing the track in 2 weeks. Having worked in pit crews through the years, including with the King of the Mountain, Peter Brock, he was well equipped to design the track. He had 3 specifications that he had to meet. 1. Show off the major landmarks. 2. Make it safe for drivers and spectators. And 3. Ensure traffic could still flow while the race was on. This is what Paul came up with. Consulting with Mark Scaife, he made some adjustments to improve safety. This is why it appears cars change lanes and there are so many chicanes throughout the track. Outside of the cost, this was one of the first objections to the race. Since gaining self-government in 1988, the ASD government didn't have jurisdiction over the National Triangle, and yet here they were telling Avesco they could host a race there. Some opponents of the race felt it cheapened the significance of our landmarks, reducing them to mere set dressing for a bunch of cars going in circles. Proponents of the race, on the other hand, felt it legitimized the city and made us look cool. By the end of August, the appropriation bill had passed, securing funding for the race. With a date set and a track planned, it was up to the Canberra Tourism and Events Corporation, or CTEC, to organise and promote the event. By September, approval from Avesco and funding was secured, but all that was left now was to find a name. Originally, it had the creative title the National Capital 100, as racers would do 100 laps over the weekend. But it wouldn't keep this name for long. The global machinery company, GMC, bought the naming rights in February, renaming the event to the GMC 400. The track was roughly 4 kilometers long, so they multiplied the 100 laps of the weekend to get the 400. The Federal Parliament approved construction of the track in December, as both houses of Parliament need to approve any changes to the National Triangle. In May, the 2,100 concrete barriers were installed, with the grandstands being installed in sections to minimise the impact on traffic. Traffic still flowed through the National Triangle before the race, so drivers could experience what it would be like to race on the track on their daily commute. The roads were officially closed off to the public at midnight on the 6th of June and wouldn't be reopened until the 12th. Local opposition was expressed on Earth Day just days before the race, with community organisations and environmental groups teaming up to tie yellow ribbons around the track. Led by Jackie Reese, this was done to demonstrate the closest that the government would get to paving the road gold. But enough politics, it's time to race. The GMC 400 had a unique format for the Supercars series. Drivers competed in 3 races. Race 1 was 25 laps and determined the grid for Race 2, with points awarded based on their finishing position. In Race 2, the grid was reversed, with first place up the back. This was done to add some pressure and excitement to the race. Finally, a 50-lap race would finish the event, with grid positions determined by the total points earned by each racer on the weekend. Teams struggled to adjust to the cold, especially after being in Darwin the race before. Autumn leaves littered the track, forcing pit crews to wipe out air intakes as tyres were changed. With tight corners and cold tyres, drivers found the track challenging. Not only were temperature and tight corners a risk factor for drivers, but the design of street circuits made them potentially dangerous for carbon monoxide inhalation. The track was tight and barricaded with concrete slabs, which essentially created a tunnel for fumes to get trapped in. Ford would monitor their drivers throughout the event, and all drivers would receive oxygen before leaving at the end of the day. With the first race done and dusted, controversy arose around ticket sales and attendance. A total of 50,435 tickets were sold, 30% of which were from interstate. But reported numbers said 109,000 people attended. Not only was this short of initial estimates given to the public, but it was counted by attendance, not ticket sales. A single person could be counted as 3 if they walked through the gate 3 separate times. But who brought this to light? Our friend, Jackie Reese. The vocal opposition to the race annoyed C-Tech so much they actually threatened to sue Jackie. When questioned about the legal action in the Legislative Assembly, Carnell said she didn't tell C-Tech to sue Jackie, but she certainly approved of their actions. Even the Australian Hotels Association joined the pile-on, blaming C-Tech for the critical reception of the race due to the lack of transparency and direction, as well as poor marketing. However, the negativity didn't get in the way of the 2001 race being approved. Seemingly taking on critiques about a lack of promotion, C-Tech began the campaign for the second GMC 400 in February 2001, with a launch event hosted at the Hyatt Hotel. As part of the festivities, the GMC 400 website was launched, and guests were given a lap of the track on a bus before watching a pit crew demonstration out the front of the Treasury building. Hoping to improve attendance and drum up hype, a Pantech truck toured with the V8 Supercars to promote the GMC 400 on the road. In May 2001, Dr. Paul Tranter from the Australian Defence Force Academy published a research paper titled Canberra's V8 Supercar Race, Sending the Right Signals for Road Safety? Dr. Tranter concluded that both politicians and bureaucrats failed to consider the potentially lethal impact of the event, stating,
"The association of alcohol and speed is arguably the most significant road safety impact of the race, particularly in terms of the symbolism of allowing the clear association of alcohol and speed in Australia's most significant national place."
Despite being called out for promoting risky driving and alcohol in a public place, promotion for the event continued. Grid girls were still very much a thing in 2001. In the weeks leading up to the race, a pageant of sorts was held at a local nightclub to find Miss GMC. In a move of political correctness, a Mr. GMC was sought after, except he was announced after the race. Now, if you ask me, we should have grid boys instead. Just look at Mardi Gras. We know how to use a road. On a classier note, the Hyatt hosted a GMC 400 charity ladies luncheon in support of Camp Quality. Tables of 10 would each have a driver as company. And before you knew it, the race was back. With the knowledge of the previous race in hand, drivers had developed strategies to conquer the Canberra circuit. But it wasn't without its incidents. Probably the most famous incident out of the three races was when Marcus Ambrose lost his tyre on lap 47, turning into Flynn Drive. Almost as if it had come to life, it rolled down the track, dodging other drivers before landing on a tyre barrier. Not even the commentators could believe it.
You couldn't do it if you tried, could you?
Look at that. There with its cousins.
Yeah, that's what they call a control tyre.
It's found its ancestors at last.
So, how did you end up here?
What an amazing,
That's incredible.
amazing situation.
The 2001 race introduced an innovation still used today, the speed limiter. When drivers enter the pits, the limiter kicks in and forces these high-powered cars down to 40 kilometers an hour, removing the human element of maintaining a safe speed in the pits. It wasn't long after the final barricade was removed that complaints came in about the use of public funds and lands to host the race. And people had every right to complain, with ticket sales down by 33%, or a loss of $1.45 million. The downward spiral continued as Kate Carnell was ousted and the Liberals lost the 2001 election. GMC also backed away as naming sponsor, most likely due to a lack of return of investment and the impacts of 9/11 on tourism. In a last-ditch effort to rescue the event, the ACT government attempted to move the race to April. Avesco was keen on the idea as warmer weather would increase ticket sales from Western Sydney. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be, as it would have clashed with Anzac Day. Without a naming sponsor and growing local opposition, the future of the Canberra 100 was looking rocky. So the 2002 race had to knock it out of the park to ensure its future. The promotion for the 2002 race began in April, with a pair of Steves abseiling down the side of Ridges Hotel. After their descent, the onlookers joined radio host Erica Hodge to witness the launch of their new TV ads. 3 weeks before the race, in a Hail Mary, construction supply company Stegbar secured the naming rights for the race. Ticket prices were reduced to entice families and students, with hotels across the city booking out weeks ahead of the race. You could say the 2002 race was all about the stunts. With abseiling drivers, stunt motorcyclists and John Howard visiting the track. Ford racers Ambrose and Besnard wore shirts campaigning to be Prime Minister when Howard came to visit. When it came to the race, drivers were now familiar with the track and had figured out their strategies. There were less accidents and more competition. The 2002 race was the most confident of the 3 races, but it failed to draw in the crowds. 85,406 people braved the cold to watch in person, 15% less than in 2001, with the majority attending on the Sunday. Drivers and promoters alike were keen to see the race return. Even the Canberra Accommodation Association praised the event, with hotel occupancy rates between 50 to 90%, but the numbers were getting harder and harder for the ACT government to support. After 3 years and $29 million, the ACT government could no longer justify the Canberra 400, cancelling the event. The claims by Carnell of massive crowds and international recognition just didn't stack up. The cold didn't help either, keeping people away and reinforcing stereotypes that Canberra was frigid and uninviting. A bit like your ex. Years later, when Tony Cochrane stepped down as CEO of Avesco, Australian Muscle Car magazine asked him if he had any regrets during his time as CEO.
I regret being talked into holding the Canberra Street Race in the middle of winter. The ACT government was adamant they wanted the event on the June long weekend, and I conceded to their wish against my better judgment.
The Auditor General published a cost-benefit report a month after the final race. The findings added another debacle to the list of calamities by Kate Carnell. Costs were significantly underestimated, poorly tracked and lacked transparency. The economic and tourist benefits were hard to quantify, and the government didn't do its due diligence. So Jackie Reese was right to be concerned. Could the V8s return one day? I seriously doubt it. Interest in the V8s has dwindled since car manufacturing left the country, and both the ACT and federal governments have no interest in renewing the project, as the Summernats basically fulfill the same niche. In 2023, there was an attempt to build a track in Epic, but that was quickly shot down by the ACT government, stating funding issues and it not aligning with redevelopment plans. In the end, the cold and cost led to the demise of the Canberra 400. Locals found it distasteful, race fans too cold, and the ACT government unviable. Do you think the V8 Supercars should return to Canberra, or are they better off not being here? Let me know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment and share. And if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button.